So let's multiply the following, but let's take it one at a time. In example of A, we have the real number of 2 multiplied the complex number of 3 minus 2i. So we have to be organized here. Notice that the complex number, it has 2 terms. So this value of 2, it needs to be distributed to both of them. In other words, we're going to multiply this just using FOIL. So let's start by distributing 2 times 3. That is going to give us positive 6. And now, when we multiply it to our second term, we're just going to multiply the values that we have in our expression. So we're going to multiply 2 times negative 2, which is going to give us negative 4. And we're just going to bring down the I with it. Now let's take a look at example B. Here we have an imaginary number of 4i, and we want to multiply it by the complex number of 3 minus 2i. We're going to perform FOIL one more time. So this imaginary number of 4i, let's multiply times the first term, which is positive 3. And when we're multiplied, we're going to multiply values with values. So we're going to multiply 4 times 3, which is going to give us 12. But because one of the terms have an I on it, let's bring down that I. So the result is 12i. And now, when we perform our second distribution, we're going to approach it the same way. Let's multiply the values with the values. So let's multiply 4 times negative 2, which is going to give us negative 8. But here, we are also multiplying an I times another I, which is going to give us I squared. And even though we're done with this multiplication, we never want to write down our answers using any exponentials of I. But notice that this expression of I to the second, previously, we have defined it as the value of negative 1. So we can go back to our result. And instead of using the value of I squared, we can just represent it as negative 1. And now notice that this multiplication, it becomes positive 8. Well, let's write this down in standard form. The real part, or the value that does not have an I on it, we should always write it first. And the imaginary part, or the value with an I on it, we should always write it second. Now let's take a look at example C. So this multiplication, it looks a little more complicated because now we have 2 complex numbers that are being multiplied with each other. We're still going to perform FOIL, but we're going to do it in order. First, let's take a look at the first value in our expression on the left, and now let's distribute to the expression in the right. Under multiplication, we're going to get 4 times 1, which is just positive 4. Let's distribute this one more time. So now we're going to get 4 times negative 5i. So again, we're going to multiply the values. So 4 times negative 5, that's going to give us negative 20. And because there was only one value of I in this multiplication, let's just bring that down. So we're going to get negative 20i. So now let's distribute our second term, 3i. When we do it to the first term, we're going to multiply values. So 3 times 1, that's positive 3. And because we have one I on it, let's just bring that down. Now let's distribute to the second term. Let's multiply values with values. So 3 times negative 5, that is going to give us negative 15. And we need to multiply I times another I, which is equivalent to I squared. Now let's try to simplify this a little bit further. Within these 4 terms, notice that there are 2 terms with an I on it, negative 20i and 3i. We can combine them down. They both are imaginary numbers. So let's bring down the 4, and when we combine negative 20 plus 3, we're going to get negative 17i. Now, in our last term, notice that we have this expression of I squared one more time. We can just rewrite that using the value of negative 1. Now we can simplify this a little bit further. Negative 15 times negative 1, that is positive 15. So let's bring everything down. And now let's write down positive 15. So we still have two terms that we can combine, 4 and 15. That is going to give us 19. And now that I wrote this down in standard form, the value that does not have an I, or the real number, it goes first. And the value that has an I, or the imaginary part, it goes second.
Hello. If you would like to continue learning about mathematics, you can check out the videos on the left.